Today, we bring you another chilling case. Lori K. Suarez, born on December 31, 1976, in California. At a young age, she was put up for adoption. While many children languish in the foster system, Lori was fortunate to be adopted quickly by Telma and Terrlble Suarez, who lived in Fullerton, Orange County. The Suarezes had already adopted a boy named Paul years earlier, and with Lori, their family felt complete. Terrlble, originally from Piracicaba, São Paulo, Brazil, was a Spanish and Portuguese teacher at Sunny Hills High School. Both he and Telma had previously been missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Rio de Janeiro before moving to California to start a new life. Lori's early years were spent in a normal, loving, religious household. However, in 1987, Lori's parents separated. Paul, now a teenager, stayed with Terrlble in California, while Telma relocated with Lori to Orem, Utah. Lori attended Orem High School, and during her sophomore year, on a trip to Lake Powell with friends, she met a boy named Mark Douglas Hakim, a junior at the same school. On that trip, Mark burned his hands trying to move the firewood, and Lori stayed by his side most of the night, but their stories diverge from there. Mark was born on April 24, 1976, the fifth child in a large family led by his father, Douglas Wayne Hakim, a well-known pediatrician in Orem and a graduate of Brigham Young University and the Medical College of Wisconsin. His mother, Janet Hakim, was a nurse who had 7 children, 4 boys and 3 girls. Mark was always a bit different from his siblings. His behavior was often described as impulsive, and many couldn't tell if he was simply awkward or liked being the center of attention. His popularity began unexpectedly during a camping trip when he rolled into the ashes of a campfire while asleep. The next morning, his friends woke up to find him covered in ashes, which made everyone laugh. From that moment on, Mark made it a habit to create humorous situations, drawing attention to himself. This tactic, in turn, made him quite popular with the girls. What Mark and Lori had in common was their shared Mormon faith. Shortly after meeting, they began an on-again, off-again relationship, which lasted for several years. After graduating high school in the mid-1990s, Mark was sent on a 2-year missionary assignment to Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, according to the church's plans. However, 11 months before completing his mission, he unexpectedly returned to Utah. There are conflicting reports about this early return. The official stance from the church was that Mark had successfully completed his mission and returned home as planned. However, some of his fellow missionaries told a different story, claiming that Mark was sent back due to what they referred to as inappropriate behavior. It seemed the lack of freedom and distance from home had taken its toll on him. Rumors circulated that Mark had started engaging in activities strictly forbidden by the Mormon faith, such as drinking alcohol and smoking. Worse, there were allegations that he had been caught in a compromising situation with a young woman he was supposedly trying to recruit to the church, far removed from his missionary duties. This was a serious infraction, especially since several of his close friends were also involved and sent home alongside him. When Mark explained his early return to Lori, he told her he had been unfairly implicated in the misdeeds of others. Despite her initial doubts, Lori appeared to believe him. Despite this setback, their relationship persisted, and their bond seemed to grow even stronger. Mark had become Lori's source of joy, a loving, fun companion who never missed a chance to make her smile. Lori's life was on a clear, well-defined path. She was ambitious, eager to succeed, build a career, live comfortably, and eventually settle down to raise a family. She understood that achieving these goals required financial stability, and the way to obtain it was through hard work. With that in mind, she took on various jobs, including working at a car wash with a close friend. Those who knew her described Lori as determined and straightforward, always clear about where she stood on matters, as she wasn't afraid to express herself openly and directly. One trait that set Lori apart from others her age was her impeccable financial responsibility. She was never late with her college tuition payments, always had enough money, and maintained her accounts in perfect order. Lori began her studies at Weber State University in 1995, but later transferred to the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, where she pursued a degree in business administration. Meanwhile, Mark, with whom Laurie had maintained a steady relationship over the years, was studying psychology at the same university. He was following in the footsteps of his older siblings, who had all achieved success in health-related careers, inspired by their father. Although their respective academic buildings were far apart, Laurie and Mark would often meet on campus during breaks or for lunch, sharing their commitment to their studies. Mark even sought help from Laurie's mother to proofread his final papers before submitting them. In late 1999, Laurie had the opportunity to intern in Washington, D.C., and during her breaks, she traveled to visit friends, including a trip to Savannah, Georgia, and even welcomed the new year in New York's iconic Times Square. In August of that same year, Laurie's dream came true when she married Mark in the stunning Mormon temple in Bountiful, located just northwest of Salt Lake City. To all who witnessed it, their marriage appeared to be a perfect union, a fairy tale wedding. Beyond being a beautiful couple, Laurie and Mark shared a deep, genuine love for one another, which made their union a celebration for both families. Laurie's parents, Harold and his wife, came to adore Mark as if he were their own son, and the same was true for Douglas and Janet, who embraced Laurie as just another cherished member of their large family. After their lovely honeymoon in Las Vegas, Laurie moved into Mark's small apartment complex, where they agreed to manage the housing group in exchange for free rent. Their future together seemed full of promise. Laurie's hard work in school also paid off, as a few months after their wedding in December 1999, she not only graduated cum laude in business management, but was also inducted into the prestigious Beta Gamma Sigma Honor Society, an accolade awarded to the top 10% of her class. Mark, too, earned his psychology degree from the University of Utah, though he unfortunately missed his graduation ceremony due to illness. To ensure he didn't miss the moment entirely, a family member captured a photo of him proudly wearing his gown. However, Mark's ambitions didn't stop there. He immediately began preparing to enter medical school while working evenings at the University of Utah's Neuropsychiatric Institute, conducting therapy sessions. During this period, he also changed his appearance, shaving his once curly red hair and growing a beard, a popular style among college students at the time. Meanwhile, Laurie secured an excellent position as an assistant to a financial advisor at Wells Fargo, a renowned financial services company with a global presence. Despite their busy professional lives, they remained deeply connected, developing the habit of jogging together every morning before diving into their daily routines. They also attended church services on Sundays and relished every moment of their newlywed life. Mark's playful and charming personality shone through in every aspect of his life. He was adored by the children at church, where he led the nursery. The kids loved how he would chase them around, tickling and playing with them, filling each moment with joy and laughter. By 2004, Laurie and both their families received some extraordinary news, marking the start of yet another chapter in their journey together. Mark had applied and been accepted to the Chapel Hill School of Medicine at the University of North Carolina, marking another step in following the successful path of his father and two older siblings. While this achievement brought immense joy, it also cast a bittersweet shadow over the couple's families, as Mark and Laurie would be moving over 2,000 miles away practically from coast to coast to coast. But, as is often the case, great accomplishments come with sacrifices, and both Mark and Laurie were more than willing to face them. Preparations for the big move began immediately. The couple started packing their belongings, and Laurie informed her employer at Wells Fargo of her decision to resign. Her departure was met with regret by her colleagues and supervisors, as Laurie had earned everyone's respect with her efficiency, dedication, and warm character. Amid these changes, the couple's fortune only seemed to grow, as Laurie received wonderful news that would make this transition even more special. She was expecting their first child, about 5 weeks into her pregnancy. Mark was overjoyed, and the news spread quickly to their families and close friends. Laurie, overwhelmed with happiness, felt as though she was in heaven, deeply blessed by life. However, one small imperfection lingered. She would be experiencing her first pregnancy far from her loved ones, with only Mark by her side. Nevertheless, the couple remained focused on their new adventure until something unexpected shattered Laurie's happiness. Just weeks before she was set to leave Wells Fargo and begin her new life in North Carolina, she received a phone call that left her visibly shaken. Her colleagues noticed the change in her demeanor as she tearfully left the office before the end of the workday without offering any explanation. Out of respect, no one pressed her for details, hoping it was nothing too serious, but it was far worse than anyone could have imagined. Just a couple of days later, on Monday, July 19th, 2004, everything changed. Mark called Laurie's office, concerned because she had not come home and hadn't arrived at work that morning. A co-worker informed him that Laurie, known for her punctuality and diligence, hadn't shown up. Sensing something was amiss, the call was transferred to Laurie's supervisor. Mark's call was transferred to Laurie's supervisor, who informed him that, as usual, Laurie had left the house around 5:30 a.m. for her morning run at Memory Grove Park. That particular day, Mark had not accompanied her, and he was growing increasingly concerned as he hadn't seen her return, nor had he noticed any sign of her coming home. Laurie's supervisor suggested that he contact the authorities immediately, which Mark did at 10:07 a.m., reporting her disappearance to the Salt Lake City Police. However, the initial response was disheartening. Since Laurie was an adult, the police explained they would have to wait 24 hours before filing an official missing person report. Frustrated, Mark began calling family members and close friends, hoping someone had heard from her. He explained that when he woke up, Laurie was already gone, she hadn't shown up for work, and he couldn't reach her by phone. By 10:49 a.m., with no updates and growing panic, Mark called the police again. This time he mentioned that he had found Laurie's car parked in its usual spot near the park, but there was no sign of her. This new information changed the urgency of the situation, and authorities immediately activated a search for Laurie. Of course, those closest to Laurie were not willing to wait for the police to act. Friends, family and co-workers quickly organized and gathered at the park, fearing that she might have been in an accident and was injured, unable to move. The search was extensive. Memory Grove Park spans more than 3.5 hectares, roughly equivalent to 350,000 square meters. Despite their efforts, no one could find any trace of Laurie. Authorities brought in tracking dogs to aid the search, but to no avail. Helicopters scanned the park from above, inch by inch, yet apart from Laurie's car, there was no indication that she had even been there that morning. Desperate for answers, the Soares family held a press conference to publicize Laurie's disappearance, releasing her image to the public. Hundreds of posters with her face were printed and distributed around the park and surrounding areas by friends, family and volunteers, hoping someone would recognize her or provide a clue to her whereabouts. Volunteers were in charge of placing posters all over the city, and by that time about 12 had joined the search for Laurie, the young pregnant woman. In the meantime, police investigators noticed a detail that didn't sit right. Laurie's car had been found in the park's parking lot where she usually parked, but the car keys were missing. However, something felt off. Laurie, who was 5 at her seat, would have had her car seat and mirrors adjusted accordingly, yet both were set for someone much taller, at least 6 feet 1.80 meters. As is common in such cases, the investigation began by scrutinizing those closest to the victim. The authorities started by looking into Laurie's seemingly distraught husband, Mark. Gradually, a long series of secrets began to unravel. One of the first things Mark mentioned was that Laurie had been feeling overwhelmed by the impending move. The relocation necessary for Mark's studies would force her to leave her job, family and friends behind. On top of that, she had recently discovered she was pregnant. This information briefly opened the possibility that Laurie had run away, but her family and friends quickly dismissed this notion. They insisted that Laurie had been excited about the move and her pregnancy. Although press reports vary on the exact timeline, the facts remain clear. Authorities were about to uncover one of the most intricate webs of lies they had ever encountered. One such discovery was that between 10:07 a.m., when Mark made his first call to the police, and 10:49 a.m., when he reported finding Laurie's car at the park, Mark had actually gone to buy a new mattress for their bed. When questioned, he claimed that in his distress, he had simply forgotten to mention it. Officers then went to the couple's home to inspect the situation. As Mark had said, they found a brand new mattress recently placed on the bed. Mark explained that they had decided to replace the old mattress because Laurie's last menstrual period had stained it. This explanation came before he had realized that his wife hadn't arrived at her workplace. The strange sequence of events and Mark's inconsistent behavior only deepened the investigators' suspicions as they continued piecing together the days leading up to Laurie's disappearance. During the investigation into Laurie's disappearance, Mark remained cooperative but noticeably nervous, which could be expected given the circumstances. However, during an interview, an important moment arose when the officer asked Mark if he would be willing to take a voice stress analysis test, similar to a polygraph, but based on detecting changes in voice patterns that could indicate stress and, potentially, dishonesty. Mark responded hesitantly, "If I refuse, of course, it makes me look guilty, right? But the courts don't even admit this stuff, do they? You trust the machine, but they don't." This reaction only increased the investigators' suspicion. Unfortunately, the police didn't get a chance to delve further, because later that night, emergency services were called to a local hotel after reports of a man running naked and screaming hysterically. When authorities arrived, they found Mark, wearing only sandals, running erratically and screaming in desperation. Paramedics quickly took him to the psychiatric unit at the University of Utah, where he was diagnosed with a mental breakdown. Toxicology tests later revealed traces of alcohol and barbiturates, possibly sleeping pills, in his system. Mental health specialists found certain aspects of the situation peculiar, particularly that Mark was naked but still wearing sandals, a behavior inconsistent with typical psychotic episodes where an individual loses contact with reality. Despite this bizarre incident, the investigation continued. In the days that followed, investigators uncovered significant evidence. Forensic experts found blood transfer stains on the back seat of Laurie's car, and a detailed search of the couple's home yielded an even more alarming discovery. Laurie's purse, wallet, and car keys were found there. This raised further questions, as Mark would now have to explain how Laurie's belongings, especially the car keys, ended up at the house. Mark would need to explain how Laurie's keys ended up in their home since, according to his account, she had driven herself to the park for her morning run and never returned. In addition to the new mattress and sheets, a blood-stained knife was found in a drawer of the bedside table. Blood stains were also discovered in various spots throughout the master bedroom. Investigators also found a large, expensive bouquet of flowers in the house, accompanied by a card that read, "I screwed up, and you're angry with me." These flowers might have been related to what neighbors reported. Some claimed to have heard loud arguments coming from the couple's apartment a few nights before Laurie's disappearance. One neighbor even stated that they saw Laurie's car parked in front of the residence between 7 and 8:30 a.m., around the time she was reported missing. This contradicted Mark's claim that Laurie had been out jogging in the park during that time. During an inspection of the area near the building, officers found a discarded mattress in a nearby dumpster. Its top fabric had been removed, but the design and serial number matched the bed frame in the couple's bedroom. As the investigation progressed, more unsettling details came to light. For instance, it was discovered that, in the days leading up to her disappearance, Laurie had become increasingly disturbed. On July 16th, the day she vanished, Laurie had left work early and made a phone call to the University of North Carolina School of Medicine, where she believed Mark was enrolled. She wanted to inquire about financial aid due to her pregnancy. To her shock, the university informed her that not only was Mark not enrolled, but there was no record of an application under his name. This revelation likely sparked a heated argument between the couple. Mark later told Laurie that he had contacted the university and was told there had been an issue with the computer system, which is why his enrollment didn't appear. However, Laurie called the university again on Friday, but it was after office hours, and she was unable to speak to anyone. The young woman left a message on the office answering machine, stating that her husband was likely not registered due to a system error and that he had already arranged everything for their future. That night, the couple attended a farewell party organized by Laurie's colleagues, where everyone observed them appearing happy together. However, something changed over the weekend. Mark reportedly confessed to Laurie that he had never enrolled in medical school in North Carolina and had not graduated as a psychologist in his second year. He had been pretending to be a student and even feigned illness on the day of his supposed graduation. In the guest bedroom, investigators found a typed letter, evidently written by Laurie, which expressed her feelings, "I want to grow old with you. But I can't do it in this condition. "I hate coming home from work because it hurts to be in our apartment. I can't imagine life with you if things don't change. I don't want to spend the rest of my life with someone unless changes are made." Although the letter was not dated, it seemed connected to the revelations about the numerous lies Mark had told, which were gradually uncovered as investigators accessed his phone records and contacted the University of North Carolina. Additionally, detectives collected footage from several security cameras near the couple's home. At a convenience store not far from their residence, Lori and Mark were seen shopping together on the night of July 18th, which investigators determined was the last time Lori was seen alive. According to the store clerk, at 9:01 p.m., the couple entered the store for just a few minutes to buy sodas. During their brief visit, while Lori was distracted, Mark approached her and asked her not to reveal that he smoked. Hours later, at 1:18 a.m., on Monday, July 19th, Mark returned to the same store, but this time alone. This time he was alone, wearing shorts similar to those worn by medical personnel instead of his usual attire. He appeared serious as he stood in front of the counter, checking his hands before paying for his purchase. After leaving the store, he realized he had forgotten to pick up his change and returned briefly before finally driving away in Lori's car. Investigators had undoubtedly gathered a significant amount of circumstantial evidence suggesting Lori's death at the hands of her husband. However, Mark remained in seclusion under psychiatric observation, which prevented the police from re-interviewing him. A week after Lori's disappearance, on July 24th, Lance Scott and two of Mark's brothers visited him in his psychiatric unit, urging him to tell them the truth about what had happened. Mark asked for time to think, and the two brothers left, returning that same night. It was then that Mark decided to confess to them that he had indeed taken his wife's life, along with that of their unborn child. A fierce argument had erupted between him and Lori after she discovered the extent of his deception during their years together, realizing that she had married a man who was practically a stranger. At one point, Lori decided to go to sleep while Mark chose to sit down and play video games, one of his favorite pastimes. Perhaps seeking a distraction, he began packing some boxes in preparation for their move to North Carolina. During this process, he stumbled upon a .22 caliber rifle. With the gun in hand, he entered the bedroom around 1:00 in the morning, pointed the barrel at his wife's head, and pulled the trigger. After taking Lori's life, Mark told his siblings that he wrapped her body in plastic garbage bags along with the blood-stained mattress topper, which he had cut with a sharp instrument later discovered in a drawer. He then disposed of Lori's lifeless body in a dumpster around 2 a.m. on Monday morning, also discarding the mattress in another dumpster in front of a nearby church. The weapon used in the crime was similarly discarded in another dumpster. Following this crude confession from Mark, his brother Lance Scott and the others contemplated their next steps. After some reflection, they decided to inform the police. Meanwhile, on Sunday, July 25th, both Lori's and Mark's parents participated in a candlelight vigil at Memory Grove Park, the site where Lori's car was found. Numerous friends, acquaintances, co-workers and community members attended to remember the promising 27-year-old victim. Shortly thereafter, Mark was formally arrested and transported to the Salt Lake County Jail. A week later, he was charged with 1 count of first-degree murder and 3 counts of obstruction of justice. The judge ordered him to remain in custody, initially setting his bond at $500,000, which was later raised to $1 million. Despite the case appearing to be solved with considerable circumstantial evidence and Mark's confession, something crucial remained missing for Lori's family: the discovery of her body. This task proved to be Herculean, as the dumpster where Mark allegedly disposed of the body had already been removed and emptied at the Salt Lake landfill. The search effort involved sifting through thousands of tons of compacted waste, buried between 9 and 12 meters deep across an area the size of 2 soccer fields, according to reports from Core TV. In addition to personnel assigned to the formidable search, 38 volunteers joined the effort, including firefighters, police, public safety officers, and members of urban search and rescue teams who had worked on recovery operations following the World Trade Center events. These teams spent dozens of 11-hour days wearing steel-plated boots, thick overalls, leather gloves, protective eyewear, goggles and masks, searching through the trash with pitchforks and even their hands, but to no avail. To facilitate the search, volunteers used forks and even their hands to remove segments of the compacted garbage, checking them more easily with the help of trained dogs. As the first week of August came to an end, Geraldo Soares, Lori's father, issued a statement to the press. He expressed gratitude for the hard work of all those continuing to search for his daughter's remains in the landfill, describing the task as horrible and unpleasant under such working conditions. He reiterated the importance of their efforts to ensure a proper burial for Lori and justice for the perpetrator of this heinous crime. In his communique, Geraldo conveyed his growing outrage as more details about his daughter's death emerged. He characterized the multiple lies told by his son-in-law as selfish and disgraceful, condemning the manner in which Mark took Lori's life as a despicable and cowardly act. He emphasized how Mark had taken the life of his wife and unborn child while they slept, adding that it was hard to imagine a more cowardly and disrespectful way to dispose of her remains. On August 14th, over a year later, a memorial service was held at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Orem, where more than 600 people gathered to honor Lori's memory. Her wedding gown was on display, accompanied by a large photograph of her and a plastic bucket used as a piggy bank to raise funds for ongoing search efforts. Mark's family members attended the service, with his father, Douglas Hing, leading the opening prayer. He expressed appreciation for Lori's positive influence on everyone who knew her, hoping she could feel the love that surrounded her that day. Lori's mother, Thelma Soares, along with other family members, shared words of gratitude for having had the extraordinary young woman in their lives, noting how Lori had brought happiness and goodness to those who knew her. Meanwhile, the investigation continued, and although Lori's remains remained unaccounted for, forensic technicians worked to genetically compare bloodstains found in Lori's car with those discovered at the scene. On October 1st, nearly 2.5 months after Lori's death, the exhaustive efforts of dozens of individuals finally bore fruit when some of her remains were reported found at the Salt Lake dump. According to information released by a sergeant, while examining garbage by hand, he discovered a bag containing scalp fragments along with what appeared to be a human jawbone and teeth. Immediately, the area was cordoned off, and a thorough search was conducted for additional remains. However, confirmation regarding the completeness of the findings remained elusive. The remains were in poor condition and exhibited advanced decomposition, yet scientific confirmation established that they belonged to Lori. Unfortunately, the investigation could not certify whether she had been pregnant at the time of her death. The knife used by her husband to end Lori's life was never recovered. Following the completion of the forensic examinations, Lori's family was finally able to give her a dignified burial in a private ceremony, closed to the press, with only a few images capturing the immense grief of her family and friends. At the end of October, Mark attended his arraignment hearing, where he was charged with first-degree murder and a second-degree felony for obstruction of justice due to lying to the police and disposing of evidence. To the surprise and dismay of Lori's family, he pleaded not guilty. Mark's defense team reportedly planned to request the court investigate his mental state, claiming that a fall from a roof at age 20 had resulted in a head injury. They suggested that if evidence of brain damage was found, it might be grounds for reducing the charges against him. After a lengthy period of lies, justice finally took its course. The case went to trial in April 2005. On the 15th of that month, Mark stunned everyone once more by pleading guilty to first-degree murder, admitting that he had shot his wife in the head while she slept on the morning of July 19, 2004. Lori's mother, Thelma, broke down in tears as Mark, the man she once thought of as a son, showed no emotion at all. The guilty plea was reached after a plea agreement with the prosecution, which resulted in the obstruction of justice charges being dropped. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for June of that same year. In an interview on the renowned U.S. television show hosted by Oprah Winfrey, Lori's mother expressed her desire for Mark to receive the harshest possible sentence, ideally life imprisonment. With just a month to go before Mark's fate was decided, Lori's family chose to remove the Haking name from her tombstone, declaring that Mark clearly did not love her. Instead, they had the word Filha Portuguese for beloved daughter engraved in its place. During the sentencing hearing on June 6, a markedly different Mark appeared, his eyes lowered and occasionally in tears. When given a chance to speak, he acknowledged that his beautiful wife had always showered him with love, even when he did not deserve it. He lamented that she was the greatest thing that ever happened to him, yet he had put an end to her life, and that of their unborn child, discarding them both. He struggled to explain his actions, stating that spending 1,000 lifetimes behind bars would not suffice as punishment, an opinion shared by Lori's family. Judge Denise Lindbergh delivered the only sentence permissible under Utah law at the time, 6 years to life in prison. She clarified that only the parole board could determine how long Mark would actually remain incarcerated, expressing hope that it would be for a long time. Notably, if it had been confirmed that Lori was pregnant at the time of the crime, the prosecution could have sought the death penalty. Lori's family was clearly dissatisfied with the sentence. In a subsequent statement, Terrlble expressed that she had loved Mark as if he were her own son, making his betrayal all the more profound. She felt it was only just that his life remain irrevocably altered, just as Lori's and her unborn child's had been. For his part, Mark's father, Douglas, stated that while they abhorred his son's actions, they were proud of him for taking responsibility for them. Mark's family continued to love him even more than before, holding on to hope that one day he might be released from prison. They believed that after enduring the painful lessons of his actions, he could eventually contribute positively to the lives of others. In his own statement, Mark acknowledged that prison was where he needed and deserved to be. He admitted he had a long journey of healing and transformation ahead of him, but expressed hope that one day he could become the man Lori always believed he was. In early July, the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole announced its decision regarding Mark's fate. He would have to serve 30 years behind bars before a parole hearing scheduled for August 1, 2034, with the caveat that his release was not guaranteed. This decision brought some relief to Lori's family, knowing that the offender would be spending a significant amount of time in prison. As of the latest reports, Mark is serving his sentence at the Utah Central Correctional Center. However, it appears he struggled to stay out of trouble. In 2006, it was discovered that he had been providing autographs, personal items, and photocopies of his writings to a website called Murder Auction. Although he promised to cease this activity, it was learned that with the support of his family, he had been writing a history of his life and reflections on his experiences during the trial. Paul Boyen, the executive director of the Utah State Attorneys Association, urged the state sentencing commission to increase the minimum sentence for first-degree murder cases to 15 years. This proposal garnered support, and on March 20, 2006, the bill, known as the Lori Bill, was passed. Despite these changes, the families affected by this tragic case spent a long time seeking answers, struggling to comprehend the events that unfolded and searching for a reason behind what seemed incomprehensible. Mark's family came to terms with the reality that their son struggled to control his emotions, which hindered his ability to cope with life's challenges. While his siblings successfully completed their studies and began to build promising careers, Mark felt he could not meet those expectations. The depth of his internal struggles may never be fully understood. He had participated in therapy at the University of Utah's Neuropsychiatric Institute, although his actual role was more akin to that of a nurse's aide. Despite this, Mark's father remained convinced that his son genuinely loved Lori. Meanwhile, Lori's family was left to navigate the pain of her loss. For her brother Paul, the real tragedy was that Mark didn't have to be a doctor or achieve anything extraordinary. He simply needed to do his best, and Lori would have loved him for that. Unfortunately, he failed to recognize this. As for Terrlble, Lori's mother, she acknowledged that she would never fully overcome the grief of losing her daughter or erase the memories of that tragic event. Yet for her own peace of mind, she chose to forgive Mark and even exchanged letters with him. Terrlble also maintained communication with the Hacking family, whom she described as wonderful. In her home, the walls were adorned with photographs of Lori at various stages of her life, including one taken of Lori and Mark together, meant to be a Christmas gift for their families. In memory of her daughter, Terrlble established a scholarship fund in Lori's name. By mid-September 2004, the fund had grown from $12,000 to $81,000, partly due to a generous contribution from Oprah Winfrey. This scholarship is awarded to a woman attending the David Eccles School of Business at the University of Utah, providing financial aid to complete the last 2 years of her degree. We would like to conclude with a poignant reflection written by Mark Hacking, intended for his parents to read after his sentencing. In this statement, he affirmed that there is no such thing as a harmless lie, regardless of its size. You might think that a lie affects only the liar, but that couldn't be further from the truth. If you find yourself on a path of deception, it's crucial to stop and confront the consequences. Dear audience, we appreciate your participation in today's investigation. We would love to hear your thoughts on this case, as your opinions are incredibly important to us. Please share your comments with the utmost respect for the victims, fellow viewers, and for us as we read your insights. Before we wrap up, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video with anyone you think might find it interesting. Thank you for joining us for another criminal investigation. We look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.